All right. And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Let me go ahead and check settings really fast. Looks good. Audio looks good. Just close out a few things here. Excellent. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Welcome, you guys. We're going to give it just a quick moment to allow people to get the notification and join. I tried to leave a post to announce going live this morning. Was having some internet issues, so we are somewhat winging it today, but I always do try to make myself available and make this a recurring Sunday theme because I absolutely love to be here with you guys answering your questions. But we will get started here in just a moment. Already we've got a number of really good questions to dive into. Let me check something really, really fast. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. All right. Okay, we are solid on this end. If there is any issues with video buffering or anything like that, usually if you refresh the page, that does the trick. YouTube live streaming can sometimes be wonky if they're working on things behind the scenes, but we are going to roll with it. So with that said, once again, happy weekend, you guys. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday so far, and thank you so much for being here and joining for another round of live Q&As. We hang out, we discuss the law. As always, I'm here to answer your questions, give feedback so you have better understanding and ability to apply these teachings to your life, your circumstances, and see the changes that you desire to see. Not a whole lot as far as announcements go. The promotion that I have going on right now for 50% off my masterclasses and workshops will only be going through the next couple of days. So if you are interested in more information and want to take advantage of that 50% off, definitely check the description box. Also, for more information on signing up for one-on-one coaching, anything like that, all is in that description. So definitely check that out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in and get started. Can you acknowledge your 3D and see it's not physically here and still manifest it? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, because we have physical senses. We have eyes and ears and physical senses that tell us that something is or is not here in the 3D. We're not trying to delude ourselves here. We're not lying to ourselves and saying that the 3D looks a certain way when it doesn't. That's not the objective here. You can absolutely see and acknowledge the 3D for what it is right now and understand that 3D is subject to change because it is your mirror. It is just mirroring your inner state. So once change has taken place internally, that's going to start reflecting differently on the outside. So yeah, you can absolutely acknowledge the 3D and still see it out pictured, of course. I saw a continuation of that question. Like, we don't have to lie about what's currently in the 3D and say it's something when it's not. Correct. What would wavering look like then? Wavering in this context is double-mindedness. So that would be going back and forth between feelings of calm, feelings of maybe confidence or feeling good about everything unfolding, and then a moment later, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling nervous, you're feeling scared. So it's the back and forth that we experience internally that constitutes wavering. Yeah. Hi, Missy. Is it enough to affirm on my self concept if I want to manifest my SP, or should I affirm for him too? Um, I'm a little unsure of what you mean by affirming for him too. I mean, the objective here, no matter what we desire to manifest, is always the change in self concept, without question. So that is the focal point, as in, we want to start to identify as the version of ourself who has what we desire, who is living the life we desire to experience. So whatever helps you to best feel into that state is totally fine. If what you mean by affirming for him is like saying affirmations on his behalf, I mean, you could. Again, ultimately, it's all in how it makes you feel, and if it helps you to identify with that desired state. If that, I hope that makes sense. But I might be misunderstanding the question a little bit. Um, but at the end of the day, yes, this is all change in self concept, change in our beliefs and assumptions, change in any kind of old narrative or story that kept us in a state of lack. Happy Sunday. I've had several moments recently when I felt inspired to take a particular action, but when I go to actually do it, the feeling quickly disappears. What is going on here? Good question. Well, if the feeling quickly disappears, I mean, I wouldn't force yourself to take the action in that case. Um, with inspired action, it's really unconscious action. In the in the moment, we're not aware that this is leading to our bridge unfolding. Like this is a part of the bridge unfolding. So it's really not until hindsight that we can even see that this was inspired action. So if you are at any point feeling moved to do something, but then that feeling changes for whatever reason, and then you're feeling instead like you should do the opposite or something else, don't force yourself to try to move along the bridge or force yourself to, push the 3D along, so to speak. Yeah. If again, if I'm understanding your question correctly, but yeah, I should make another video talking about inspired action. I know that that's a topic that can get confusing. Um, and we may be unintentionally trying to, like, unconsciously trying to move things along under the guise of inspired action. And we want to be mindful that that's not the case. Hi, Missy. Thinking of being rich and wealthy feels unnatural to me. I start to imagine and then cry. Oh, oh, don't cry. Do I stay with it and let it pass and go at it again? Any tips to imagine being wealthy? Thank you. It can be overwhelming as hell when imagining something that is unfamiliar, when you are putting yourself in a new state for the first time. It can get very emotional. It can get incredibly overwhelming. So you're not alone there. Just first and foremost, it can feel like a lot. So this isn't a bad thing. This is not in any way means that you're doing something wrong or anything like that. I would absolutely say stay with it. Don't try to force yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed to like keep going. If you need to take a break and let yourself calm first, then do that. But return to the state when you are feeling better, when you are feeling more relaxed and more calm. Absolutely, I would stay with it and let the emotions pass, let the emotions subside, and go back there. Um, because you're going to be less and less overwhelmed each time you return to that state. As you familiar as you familiarize yourself with a new state of consciousness, by continuing to go back there, it's going to feel less overwhelming. It's going to feel less big and more natural and normal each time, which is the idea here. So, any tips on imagining being wealthy? Uh, Again, utilizing your imagination in whatever way feels most natural for you, and making sure that you're not trying to force yourself or push yourself when you are feeling, you know, high emotions or a lot of that feeling of overwhelm. Um, Use a scene that implies wealth, something that would imply that you are now abundant. A friend or a family member is congratulating you on your success and asking you how it feels, knowing that you have complete freedom to do whatever you want now. So it doesn't need to be anything like grandiose, it just needs to imply. But it does become more and more natural the more you return to that state. So stick with it. Sorry, one second, guys. Hey, Missy, I hear most people talk about manifesting a relationship with someone you have dated before but broke up with. Why does no one seem to talk about manifesting a relationship with someone you have never been in a relationship with, but rejected you and only sees you as a friend? Thank you. Oh, I mean, that certainly is a universal experience for most people, unfortunately, and we've all been there. Um, I wouldn't say that it's you know every SP circumstance is going to be unique in its own right. And though, yeah, I would agree that maybe in most cases it is an ex or somebody that you were close to, maybe somebody that you were intimate with. However, that said, I've certainly worked with a lot of people. I have spoken with a lot of people that were manifesting somebody that they never dated, somebody that they were never in a previous relationship with. So um, there are very many people like what you're describing. You're not alone in this. I do promise you that. Um, yeah, there's all different walks of life when it comes to the SV journey. But regardless, even if it's somebody that you have never dated before, somebody that you don't have that history with, it ultimately doesn't matter. That there's no prerequisite there in order to manifest a specific person. So in the same way that you would manifest somebody that you dated, you would apply that to somebody that you haven't. It's all about that end state, putting yourself in that state where the two of you are together in a loving relationship. Hi, Missy. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you too. Sometimes I feel lighter and at peace about my manifestation, but then I wonder if I've truly surrendered or if I've just given up. Oh, how can I tell the difference? Good question. Um, I mean, when you have reached the Sabbath period, the period where you know it's done, it's gonna feel like it's gonna feel more like a sense of calm. You're gonna be at ease, um, and it's going to feel more certain that this is inevitable as far as the 3D is concerned. Like this is your experience. You've claimed it. You've selected this state, so it is yours now. So it's more about that knowing ultimately, because I understand like we may feel similar emotions or sensations from giving up, although I would say when you give up on your manifestation, it's more of a feeling of, stemming from a place of just exhaustion or tired or no longer feeling confident that this is going to play out in your favor. If we're honest with ourselves, we can distinguish the difference, because those two states are very different in how they feel. A state where it's done and it's yours, and a state where you've given up on it, those are two very different states. And if we're very honest with ourselves, we'll be able to distinguish which one is which. Mm-hmm. Could you do a breakdown of Neville's 1967 lecture, Keep the Sabbath? Yes, I love that lecture. Actually, let me make a note of that. Yeah, and I am always open for anyone's request for lecture breakdowns when I do my Neville lecture series. Sorry, just making a quick note here. But that one is a fantastic lecture. Speaking of the Sabbath, you got it, Autistic Spaceman. Love your username, by the way. What determines the bridge? Is it anything else besides your beliefs? Your bridge is predetermined. And I mean, it is going to unfold in a way that seems most natural to you. So, of course, your beliefs and assumptions are going to play a huge role in how that bridge unfolds. But every desire also comes with the ways and means of its expression. Like God has that all sorted for you. We just need to occupy that state. And I know it sounds so simple in theory, maybe not so much in practice, but what determines the bridge primarily is, or at least the events, what we're going to experience along that bridge, is our self-concept. Another question. When I'm in stats, I start feeling good, but then I lose focus or it stops feeling real. What's the best way to handle that moment? Thank you. Good question. And this is common. This is normal, especially if you're somebody that may have difficulties with keeping your focus and attention in your day to day. I know I certainly did. The best way to handle this is just kind of allow yourself to kind of drop back, so to speak, and get back into that more relaxed state and allow the scene to come back to you. Don't try to micromanage and force your way through the scene with your willpower, with conscious effort. It's going to feel very unnatural in that regard. A lot of times with practice, you're going to be able to just gently redirect yourself if you lose your focus, or if you're taken out of your scene for any reason. So really the best way to really hone in on that SATS is just consistent practice. But make sure that you are not trying to force yourself to, move the scene along, so to speak. Let me see here. How are the kitties? Kitties are good. Kitties are really good. It's definitely slowed down. Uh, we're not in the kitten season anymore, thankfully. Is it crazy? Um, I do have one litter here, three little ones that should be going up for adoption this next week. So I should introduce them before they go. It has been such a busy morning today that I have not had the opportunity to round all of them up, but the kitties are doing really, really good. And if you guys want to see them before they head out for the next Q&A, I can certainly bring them in here and introduce y'all. Where's my spot? Can I date other people while manifesting my SP? As far as the actions you take in the 3D and what you do, you can do whatever you'd like. It ultimately doesn't matter as long as it is not hindering or interfering with your living in the end. As long as it's not having any effect on what you do in here, ultimately you can do whatever you'd like. However, that said, if you are finding that it's causing any kind of confliction or double-mindedness, then I would really take a look at what it is you want and eliminating anything that could be possibly hindering that. But I mean, the short answer is yes, you can. Good morning. Can you please explain belief in our manifestations? Like, do we need to believe it first? Thank you. Good question. I'm not going to say that we need to have 100% conviction in order to manifest. That certainly has not been the case for myself. Usually is not the case for most people. You can still see something outpictured even if you do have moments where you waver and you're double-minded. In fact, when we are new to this practice, the odds are pretty high that we're not going to have full belief and conviction in what we are manifesting. And that's okay. That's kind of the point of this practice, is to start to change those beliefs and assumptions around whatever it is that we're aiming to manifest. That said, I still fully teach and stress the importance of having that be the objective ultimately. We don't want to just stop once we see the 3D change if we are still noticing patterns and feedback from our old state. If we're still holding these old assumptions, these old narratives and beliefs, still identifying with that old state, I would continue to go to the end until you notice that internal shift within you, until you notice a change in your thought patterns, you notice a change in your reactions, you notice a change in how you feel. Because, I mean, Law of Assumption 101, the foundation of all of this, it's whatever you believe and assume to be true that becomes your physical reality, that becomes your 3D experience. So if we want to manifest our desires and maintain them and keep them around, then we want to make sure that that our self-concept is lined up with what we desire to experience. Yeah. I accidentally got into SATs yesterday and it was so real. Does it mean that it's impressed and I can drop it? Thank you. Well, most importantly is, how are you feeling about it today? Are you noticing a change in how you feel? Like, do you feel more calm about that desired outcome? Do you feel like it's done? That's indication on impression. But it is fantastic to see that you were able to get yourself to that place in SATs where it feels very real for you, because that is the goal with SATs. The reason we do SATs is to feel it real, because the subconscious mind cannot distinguish the difference between an event that happens in the 3D and an event that happens in imagination. It felt to that same degree of intensity if it feels that real. So the way we know something is impressed, note how you feel about it. That said, if you are noticing perhaps still some fears and doubts around the manifestation, around what it is that you desire, then I would keep going back to the end state. But that is really, really cool that you got there. Same thing happened to me, by the way. The first time I ever successfully did SATS was completely an accident, and it was a trip. Hi, Missy. Can I create the assumption that everything manifests in 24 hours every time? Would that be possible? I mean, yeah. Yeah, anything is possible. You can form any assumption you'd like. That'd be possible. Hi, Missy. I'm having trouble with manifesting even the smallest thing. Please help. Thank you. So and I take it you mean smaller manifestations, like applying the list method, trying to manifest things that are small first. We want to make sure that whether it's something big or something small, that we're not seeking validation and confirmation from the 3D, that we're not letting ourselves become attached to these small things because of the attachment to manifestation as a concept. We really, really, really want to be mindful of where we are in here. So do you feel like you're in a place where you have dropped it and you're no longer thinking about these small things? Because that's really ideally the place that we would like to be. It's gonna happen when you're not looking, when you're not thinking about it every time. So I would say start to really pay close attention to your mental diet, to your inner conversations, to how you are reacting in regard to manifestation. That's going to be your gauge, and that's going to be your feedback as to why or why not things are showing up for you. Mhm. Is there really a destined person for us, or can we decide whoever we want? I mean, we can decide whoever and whatever we want to experience. That's, you know, as God, you can literally imagine anything. You can do anything. You can be anyone. Um, however, that said, we may, as awareness, as God, we may have things to experience that we want to experience, other people that we may want to experience it with. Um, this is why we have desires to begin with. So if we do desire an experience with a specific person, um, yeah, that's because it's something that was meant to be experienced. The whole point of this human existence is to experience and evolve from that and continue to evolve, so until we reach inevitably the state of Christ, which is awakened to who you really are. That said, we can still do whatever we want. We have complete free will at the end of the day. Greetings from Germany. Thank you for all your videos. Thank you. And good evening to you. Thank you for being here. Hi, Missy. Recently, I found an indescribable inner peace. Oh, really peaceful and felt like my end goal with SP is done, although we are in no contact. And I really had the feeling that it is done after many nights of sats and gently guiding my thoughts during the day. Am I in the Sabbath and can I go about my life or should I keep doing my techniques? Thank you. Oh, that is so sweet. I love that for you. And to be clear, number one, it does sound like you're in the Sabbath from what you're describing. It certainly is that that inner peace, that calm, that sense of, you feel steady. You don't feel all over the place. You don't feel double-minded anymore. Um, so what you're describing sounds exactly like that. And in that case, you can absolutely drop it. There's there's nothing else to do consciously at that point except go about your life. So I would say do that. We don't want to try to keep forcing ourselves back into the end state if it already feels like it's done. Yeah. I'm excited for you. That's so good. Hi, Missy. What do you think about the mindset of manifesting an SP but also being open to meeting someone better? Do these contradict each other? Thank you. Good question. Really good question. Um, I mean, on the surface, it can sound contradicting, but I think what you're describing is a general state of a loving, committed relationship. The desire is a loving, committed relationship. And perhaps there is an ideal person in mind, but being open to whatever that looks like is certainly not, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you may notice considerably less resistance taking that approach because you can go much more general when going to the end in that case. That said, if what you desire is a specific person, if that kind of overrides or is stronger than the desire to, you know, be with whoever shows up or whoever manifests, um, you know, don't be afraid to go to the end with someone specific if that is ultimately what you want, is what I'm trying to say. But otherwise, if you are just focused on the state of a loving, committed relationship, then I would be going there. Hi, Missy. How can I manifest a partner that isn't a specific person? I have a hard time visualizing being with someone I haven't met or how I'm supposed to meet them in the first place. Good question. This highlights an important note, um, something that as humans we are very much in the terrible habit of doing, and that is concerning ourselves with the how we're going to meet this person, how are things going to show up, what are the conditions that need to be met first. We don't need to worry about any of that. That is not our concern. That is not our job whatsoever. So, as far as how you're supposed to meet them in the first place, we don't know how we're going to meet them. We don't know how that bridge is going to unfold, and that's totally fine. Because that's not our job. The only thing that we're being asked to do is go to that end state that implies it has already happened. Um, and as far as visualizing being with somebody that you haven't met, you can absolutely imagine a scene that implies that you have met somebody. For example, you can imagine a conversation with a friend or family member, a loved one, talking about how you met this incredible person and you two have hit it off and they're wonderful to you. They check all the boxes. You feel amazing about this relationship so far. That is an end scene that implies manifesting a person that is not someone specific, somebody who's completely new, someone you haven't met before. So I would take that kind of an approach versus trying to visualize what somebody looks like when you haven't met the person. That's certainly going to feel challenging to do. Going back to my spot. Hey, Missy, what happens if we get thoughts of the future planning things with SP? Is this natural, or should we feel I have it right now in delusion? uh, if I'm understanding the question correctly, we can absolutely imagine things that we want to do with our person in the future because that's what you would be doing if you're in a relationship with somebody. When you're in a relationship with someone, you're going to want to make plans and go do things, whether that's go on a trip together or go on a date or whatever that looks like. That's completely normal. That is behavior that would be living from the end. Um, but to be abundantly clear, this is not about trying to lie to ourselves or live in delusion. We're not trying to convince ourselves that the 3D is a certain way right now if it isn't, right? This is all just taking place in imagination. And in imagination, due to the fact that there's no linear time, there's no conditions that need to be met, you can put yourself right now in a state where the two of you are already together. There's nothing that can stop us from doing that, other than the fact that we're not conditioned to imagine in that way. It's a whole new way of imagining, and it does maybe take a little bit of practice to get used to it, but we're not trying to delude ourselves here. Not at all. If anything, quite the opposite. It should feel real. It should feel natural when we imagine. But you can absolutely have thoughts about what the two of you are going to do in the future because that's what you would do in a relationship with somebody. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. I try to stay in order, guys. I really do try. Chat likes to be bouncy. Sometimes I get lost, so give me 1 second. Hey, Missy, what about when SPs are hot and cold? Inner state feels decent. Tarot pole keeps saying communication and connections are coming, but the 3D is slow and stale. What is the issue here? So, hot and cold behavior from our person is reflection of our internal state. Because everything in the 3D is reflection of our internal state. So the other person is reflecting us going back and forth between feeling it real or feeling yourself in that relationship and then feeling the absence of them, wondering where they are, wondering why the 3D hasn't changed yet, wondering when it's going to show up. You see how that's us being back and forth? Or if we have an assumption that, you know, they're being distant, they're pulling away, and we react and respond to that. Everything is a reflection of our internal state. Everything. If you haven't read or heard Neville's lecture on the Pearl of Great Price, I would definitely do so. Because when it comes to tarot cards, when it comes to astrology, when it comes to any sort of divination or premonitions of the future, we want to be very, very mindful that number one, there is no external source that can tell you what's going to happen in the future because you are the first and only cause. That means you are the one who determines what that future looks like, not the cards, not the stars, not anything like that. So also we do want to be mindful about watching the 3D, being aware that nothing is changing in the 3D, because what is that going to manifest as? If we are consistently bringing into awareness that they are not here, what is that going to manifest as? It's going to be more of them not showing up and more of them not being here, which is why the focus is internal. This is all about the internal state. And I know that takes getting used to, but that's entirely the point of this practice, is getting used to, instead of being conditioned to outside circumstances, you are learning to live from the inner state instead. Yeah. But I would just be very observant and very keenly aware of your mental diet and what state you are in your day-to-day in regards to your person. And are we genuinely living from the end, or are we being back and forth? Oh, thank you, Michelle. You are sweet. Hey, Missy, I love your I Remember When video. Do you have any more success stories of using that technique in particular? Good. You mean the video from yesterday? The Neville Goddard lecture video where he talks about that technique? It is a fantastic one. It is one that I don't use. I don't really use a whole lot of techniques these days anymore, but that was one that I certainly did utilize quite a bit, because it also acknowledged that old state. It didn't feel so much like I was trying to lie to myself or anything like that. I personally found it very helpful. I noticed others have as well. Um, as far as particular success stories of using that technique, I mean, I've used that technique for things. I mean, off the top of my head, nothing insane or huge, but I've been able to see other people's change in behavior. I've used it to, manifest changes in, just the day-to-day things around me. Really, I'm trying to think of anything specific, but again, it's been a while. That said, I would absolutely recommend applying it in your day-to-day and just seeing how that feels. And ultimately, when we reach that place of relief, when it feels like, the current circumstances are now behind us, it's going to feel like relief and satisfaction. So it is a fantastic technique. Hi, Missy. What do you think of the concept of luck? When we have desires that people say is purely depends on luck, should we go with the belief of luck doesn't exist, or I always have good luck? It's hard for me to choose because only the first one is right according to the law, but the second one feels more natural to me. Thank you. Good question. I mean, we can absolutely, you know, if we believe in luck, then we are going to experience being lucky. If we believe that we are lucky, I should say. If we believe that, I always find myself in good fortune and everything working out for me, that implies that feeling of luck. So I don't subscribe to the idea that it's purely luck that determines circumstance. That's not true. But and I wouldn't say that it doesn't exist because everything exists, but ultimately it's, do you desire to identify with this concept? And I'd say for something like good fortune or luck, if that's something you want to identify with, there's certainly no harm in that. At least any that I see. Hi, Missy. Should we give up on impossible desires if they take a lot more work and more practice with SATs? Or should we not give up on any desires? Oh, that's a really good question. Number one, I don't ever encourage anyone to give up on their desires ever. That's because even if we decide to give up on our desire, doesn't mean that we're going to stop desiring it. It doesn't mean that we're going to cease desiring this thing. We're just going to remain in a state of longing. And that's certainly not going to be helpful for us. Um, However, that said, if it feels like you're up against a lot of resistance and there's a lot of challenge with this so-called impossible desire, if you wanted to focus your attention on things that feel more reasonable or things that feel easier to manifest, for lack of better words, you can certainly do that and focus on building your faith. That's one way to approach it if you wanted to do that. However, it is really important to note that saying that impossible desires take a lot more work is an assumption. It's not inherently true. The law is the same application whether it's for a cup of coffee or $1 million. Same thing. Now, to us, it's going to feel very, very different, and that is where we run into the issues that we run into. But we want to be mindful of what we are continuing to assume to be true. So never give up on your desire. That said, if you want to, focus instead on building your faith and imagining things that come more naturally to you, you can take that approach. It's up to you. There is no such thing as impossible desires or that they objectively take a lot more work. That's our perception of it. Hi, Missy. A week ago, I suddenly felt so fed up with everything, aw, and I decided to drop my SP manifestation. And ever since I have felt like myself again, I have started to enjoy my life again. Then I had to reach out to my SP. We are in no contact, and to my surprise, he started to tease and joke with me like we used to. Uh, by far, he has been avoiding me. I don't know what I want now. What do I do? Oh, I know that this can feel incredibly frustrating. It feels like as soon as we give up on aiming to manifest, that's when we start to see movement. That's when we start to see things change in our 3D. And that's also an incredibly common occurrence because what's happening here is you're no longer focused on trying to fix the problem or getting your person back. You're no longer focused on the state of lack. And when we're no longer focused on the state of lack and we feel more like ourselves again and we're feeling better, that is, the perfect conditions for seeing things finally out picture. Uh, that said, as far as what you want to do, that ultimately is something that you're going to need to decide. But I would get clear first on what it is that you desire, and perhaps if you do decide to you know, come back to imagining the end state with your person, maybe trying different approach, maybe trying a different way of imagining, doing so in a way that can feel more natural for you, uh, anything like that. Yeah. First do let yourself have a moment and get clear on what it is you desire before anything else. Hi, Missy. Thank you so much for these Sunday chats. A couple of weeks ago, I found your channel, and the law of assumption felt very natural to me because I already had many vivid dreams of my SB. Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful to see. I'm so glad that the videos have been helpful for you. Good. I have a hard time with affirmations. How exactly do you do it? Good question. Um, and then this answer might be different depending on who you ask. For myself, and I can only speak for myself and my experience, the only time affirmations have been effective is when they have when they resonate, when they feel natural, when they feel true, so to speak. So if we are going to use affirmations, try to word them or put them in a way that you can get behind. That doesn't feel like you're trying to lie to yourself or coerce yourself into believing something that you don't. Um, it's a lot of teachings. I would say most teachings now in the law of assumption community are around robotic affirming, which I'm not going to say that it doesn't work or does or whatever the case. Everyone is different. But if we're noticing a lot of resistance and difficulty with just saying words for the sake of saying words, try to really focus on phrases that actually pull that feeling from you, phrases that you can really get behind. Yeah. I should make another video talking more about this. And I think somebody else had a question in here about what are my thoughts on robotic affirming. I mean, again, I'm not going to dismiss it or say that it doesn't work or whatever the case, but in my experience, it really wasn't until those affirmations were felt that it really made a change to my self-concept. Um, I the first time I manifested my person back, I was predominantly using affirmations, I was affirming like crazy, just affirming, affirming, affirming. This was, even before I really knew about Neville Goddard, and he did come back. It did technically work, but it didn't really change my self-concept. The affirmations did not change anything within me. I still had the same fears. I still had the same doubts. As soon as I stopped affirming, it's like I went straight back into that old state. So, um, and then that's why I try to teach this law in the way of this is about feeling. This is about what we are identified with and what we are naturally believing and assuming to be true. That is always what it's outpictured, no matter what. Hey, Missy, what do you think about scripting? Scripting can be a powerful tool. Again, like with any technique, it's to invoke that feeling within you. It's to elicit that response and that feeling state within you. So all techniques really serve the same purpose. There's not one that I would say is inherently better than another. It's what best helps us to capture that feeling of our wish fulfilled and feeling it as though it's natural. But scripting can help with that. It can certainly help you to really hone in your focus on whatever it is that you are writing and really putting yourself there internally. And if you're noticing that, then I would continue to use it. Let me see here. Hello, Fran. Thank you for dropping in. Thank you for dropping in. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. I know you say that the 3D doesn't matter, but I don't know how to interact with people when they ask me about something that happened, but I have currently revised a scene regarding that event. Do I tell them the new memory or the old memory? And what happens if they remember the old? Good question. And I know it can be challenging for us to navigate the 3D while we are on this journey. I have a video coming out discussing that in a bit more detail. Uh, Basically, what we want to remember is that number one, we don't have to lie. We don't have to, this isn't about lying to somebody in the 3D circumstances, right? If somebody recalls the old memory or if something happens that is unwanted, we go back and we revise it again. It is that simple. And we continue to do so until that new memory is what really resonates and what really sticks as what happened. And depending on what we are revising, that can be something that we need to go through and recondition more thoroughly than other things. But again, whatever that looks like, yeah. Just make sure, as far as what you do and interact in the 3D, if anything shows up and happens in a way that is not ideal, you have that power to revise again, no matter what. All right. Got time for maybe a couple more questions. Let me see here. I do robotic affirmations because I can't do SATs. And I know, again, robotic affirmations are pretty much what's most widely taught as far as the law of assumption is concerned, as far as manifestation is concerned. It's a very, very popular technique. I'm not saying not to do robotic affirming. I'm not saying it's not going to work for you. Everyone is going to be unique in their circumstance and how they imagine and what comes naturally to them. So don't take it as discouragement or me saying that you can't use affirmations. Affirmations can be a very powerful tool. They absolutely can be. See here. Hello, John. Good to have you back here, sir. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Hey, Missy, how can I fully trust and persistent faith for my current SP when my past SP never returned, even when my identity shifted? And I know fear of disappointment and fear of failure is certainly a huge driving factor for us. It drives a lot of what we do or don't do in this practice. What I would be paying close attention to is, to the best of your ability, observe where you were in the past and observe where you are now. What we do want to make sure that we're not overlooking is building our faith and building our trust in ourself as the operant power. And the most effective way we can do that is through just our self-awareness, through seeing and experiencing in real time things out picturing that we once imagined, seeing that this outer world is just a reflection of our inner world. Because that is the law in a nutshell. And if that were true, we should be able to see that. We should be able to observe that. So I would be focusing very much on building your faith, building your trust in yourself as the operant power. But also, we also want to be very, very, very clear and honest with ourselves. Were we genuinely living from the end with that, old SP or the last person, or not? You mentioned your identity shifted. I'm not sure if that implies that you were living from the end. That's why I ask, or why I say that. But really, this is about building faith and trust so that we're not being constantly deterred from that fear of failure and fear of disappointment. A lot of times that can hinder us from even going to that end state. Hi, Missy. Is it possible to completely revise your reality, like your birth, dates, things that are meant to be set in stone? You can revise anything that you would like. If you can imagine it, you can experience it. Full stop. Now, to the degree that we believe that is another thing entirely. Of course, it's going to feel difficult to accept that. Of course, it's going to feel difficult to believe that, so to speak. However, you can absolutely revise whatever you would like. What I would recommend is first building trust and building faith so that you start to feel more confident in your ability, in your creative power, your imagination, and your ability to revise whatever it is that you would like. You are so welcome, you guys. You are so very welcome. All right. Unfortunately, on that note, I do have to jet. I do have to run. Got a number of follow-ups and emails to get back to this afternoon, but I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I hope your Sunday is going wonderfully so far. Excellent questions, excellent feedback. If I didn't get to your question, I do sincerely apologize, but rest assured we do this every week. So I do hope you join next time. Keep an eye out for more content coming out this week, and be well always. Much love to each and every one of you. And I will see you soon. Bye, guys.